when Jesus returns, it's going to happen exactly on that day without any change whatsoever, even in a second. And so that's how I understand the decretive will of God.
Yeah,
God determines it, plans it, it's going to happen that.
I don't disagree with that. I agree. I was just curious, and it wasn't necessarily just a question for you, but when we talk about determinism versus free will, obviously we're considered by science apes. We're part of the animal kingdom, and I was just wondering what the difference is between the determinism of other animals versus the determinism or free will of human animals. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were. But any atheist or anyone who has an idea could freely answer that. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to listening because I got to go back to work.
Sure. I mean, the issue is, Matt, that they go through, they are discussing in the paradigm of the philosophy of the mind. And what that mind represents is, they're telling me, is not necessarily a human mind. And so then what kind of mind are we talking about? You're talking about animals. You can include God into it. All three are, I guess, minds, and they look at it through that paradigm of that type of philosophy. I don't have that type of training or learning, so I can't really speak from that world, but I can speak from a biblical world of what the Bible says God's mind represents, and just my normal understanding of what human minds represent.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. But then the question, the inevitable question arises. It's like, all right, so when you're finger fucking your own asshole, and by asshole, I don't mean anything like what we mean by an asshole, right? We're talking about a vagina. So when you're finger fucking your own asshole, right?
Any other questions or comments?
So Rashad, you don't
John,
think...
hold on just one sec. John, if you're going to use language that makes your God as like almost infinitely elastic, it can just, you can say anything you want and there'll be a defense because just how vague the language you use is. I mean, it's almost as elastic as your asshole.
If this is the way the conversation is going to go, then I'd like to thank everybody on the stage for admitting you're agnostic and that you're not sure you exist anymore for the
James, I would suck your cock.
You are disgusting, Daniel.
Why?
What are you talking about, James?
Is that the meaning of no holds bar? Just so I know in the future, Godless, if you create a room titled No Holds Bar.
The same way as you mean asshole. I'm talking about an asshole in a different way.
Look.
Like, shut the fuck up.
Okay, but let's go back.
Can we just get back to the conversation?
Let's get back to the meat of the matter. Oh, he's back. So Rashad, you don't think that God is a mind, but then you do think that God is a mind.
Yeah, you're either too stupid to know that you don't know what you're talking about, or you're too dishonest to understand what your claims were.
So you don't.
So choose between the two. Is it that you're too stupid or too dishonest?
You don't think that God is a mind.
Well, what happened there?
God isn't
so which is it? Which is
you
it?
think that God isn't a mind?
Are you too stupid to understand the argument?
But you also think that God is a mind.
Why am I being muted?
The property of omniscience.
Yeah, why am I being muted?
So you're contradicting yourself, and now you want to run away.
Rashad, do you do anything but troll?
I'm not muting you.
Of course.
What were we talking about before Daniel made it?
I mean, personally, I am interested in the conversation because I have heard Muslims say that God is not a mind, does not have a mind. That's interesting. That comment is interesting to me because the Bible explicitly says God has a mind, and so.
But he doesn't think that. He doesn't think that.
Yeah, but John, the Bible is not true.
He doesn't think that as simultaneously as he thinks that.
So, Rashad, just clear this up. How can a non-omniscient entity... Oh, start again. How can a non-mind be omniscient? Like, do you have a different definition of omniscience that precludes consciousness of some kind?
Does any definition of omniscience entail a mind necessarily?
Of course it does, dummy. Of course it does.
So what do you mean by mind?
If God
I read the paper.
If God knows all true propositions,
is someone going to mute him while I'm speaking or not?
True belief.
Yeah, just let him finish.
Thank you. So this argument that's rendered here if anyone read the article above, is one of the silliest arguments possible. It's arguments from incredulity. It's claiming that because we can't understand what omniscience is, right, that we can't explain how omniscience is either physical or in some other way rendered as possible in this universe, therefore it's not possible. Please read the article and you'll see how.
Yeah, okay, thank you for your opinion on the article. So, you said something completely ridiculous. You said that God can be omniscient, but still be a non-mind. So I'm asking you to justify that claim.
What do you mean by mind, Darth?
I already gave you the definition. I already gave you the definition, and now you want to prevaricate from the question, apparently. So now you have to answer my question.
I told you I'm not
interested
in your questions, Darth. You're too stupid to understand your argument and too dishonest to render my position.
How is it the case that God... How is it the case that God knows all true propositions?
Why am I being muted
not
again?
A mind? How is that
when
the
he's
case?
Asking me a question and I'm responding, why am I
You're not responding, you're being a fucking asshole.
Hey, Darth, could you for the room just briefly define what a mind is?
I already defined it. I'm not doing that nonsense anymore. Oh, so you leave.
Okay. I was just hoping because perhaps if you did define it, then you could then
of course he knows. That's just a silly trap that he does.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like your question, but it looked like he was trying not to answer because he asked something. And I know you're saying that you answered already, but it didn't seem like it was moving forward because he was not given a clarifying question and answer.
John would be the expert on that.
No, it wasn't moving forward because he was dodging. Look, Arianis was decent enough to stay muted while he was talking, and then he wouldn't sit there and listen to the response. It's fucking crazy.
I mean, I think it's a good question. How can you be omniscient without a mind?
Yeah. And you don't think that applies to you? What is the common property between mind as we think of it and God's mind?
Well, I mean, the first things that come to mind is, no pun intended, but intelligence, emotion, will. Those are the three main things I think of.
Wait, what? How was that an answer again?
How is that not an answer?
Can you repeat it?
Yeah, not all minds have. I mean, yeah, can you go ahead and...
Yeah, I thought that as far as the mind is, as far as humans and God, the similarities or analogous properties would be intelligence, will, and emotion. That's what I first think of.
You don't think that it's furnished with, a mind is furnished with things? Isn't that what comes to mind? No pun intended. When you think of mind,
I don't know.
Fucking content there, right?
You mean like content, like a computer?
No, a content like a thought, a belief, a desire. Is that what you mean when you say God is a mind?
Absolutely not.
Well, then what is it in common?
I just told you. Intelligence, will, emotion.
You're adding those are all analogical, right, John?
That's correct, but that's irrespective of whether it's univocal or analogical.
Yeah, but so you're just equivocating when you say those. I didn't even hear what Daniel said. I just joined.
He's trying to add beliefs and all kinds of other things into this.
Well, that's what I mean. You say a fucking mind, right? It's furnished with things, right?
Daniel's being so dishonest.
It's furnished with, like, thoughts, desires, beliefs, things like that, and you say that God has none of them, then you're speaking analogically, but what is the common property?
I just gave it to you.
Yeah, but that's just an equivocation. But what is the common property? That it has a will?
Correct.
And what is a will? It's an intent, right? Or an intention of some type.
As far as God's concerned, I understand it as an act.
God's will is an action?
That's correct.
Yeah, I'm just still failing to see the common property. Where in virtual, what does the analogy hold between mind as we understand it and God's mind?
How do you understand mind?
Well, they're furnished with things, right? Beliefs, desires.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Intentions.
Yeah, I don't understand,
it that way. Fucking mind that way? How do you understand a human mind?
So you want to incorporate everything about humans and say that necessarily represents mind, even a mind that's not human?
Yeah, that's what we mean when we say a mind.
So do you think an animal has all of those things you're talking?
I wouldn't know.
Oh, so now, but you agree that animals have minds?
Yeah.
I want to see God do a three-peat. He comes back in here again, but he expects it to go differently.
John, we don't worship animals and try and follow.
That's a red herring.
No, John.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
May I explain? May I explain?
No, that's why it doesn't
matter. I can't explain.
Well, you just
It's ridiculous.
Okay, just interrupt me then. You won't let me finish my point. Go ahead and explain.
You're actually interrupting me. Well, it doesn't matter what you say. Well, this matters what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Daniel came in here. Daniel came here trying to talk about a mind, right? And he says, what is representative of mind? And then I said, do animals have a mind? And do they have those things? And he said, no. And so in other words, he's falling on his own sword.
Okay, you said, haha, you don't know how animals' minds work. So, you thought that was a gotcha, right? And I was responding to that. Do not interrupt me. I was responding to that by saying, it's not that relevant that we're not entirely sure what goes on in an animal's mind because we don't worship them. We don't assume they're omniscient and we don't try and follow what they tell us to do. That's the difference. So it doesn't really matter. You can say, I don't understand an animal's mind, but if you want to say you don't understand God's mind, then you've got a problem.
It does not require that we understand God's mind.
Yeah, but you see the problem, though, is that when you use language so vague such that that when you use an analogy, there is no common property between the two. And I mean, what's
There is a common property. That's what I'm saying.
What's being said at that point, right? I mean, it's just infinitely elastic.
Listen, we're talking about a mind. What is a common property of mind with God and man? That's what we're discussing. You introduce all sorts of other things, right? And then, so you're trying to say these things are necessary of a mind. In other words, common property of what? All minds, including, hang on, all minds, including God, and then animals too. And then he says no. And so, the problem is really with Daniel. The problem with Daniel, hang on. The problem with Daniel is trying to introduce common properties of that's related to all minds, and then now he has an exception.
Yeah, but there's a common property between God's mind and our mind.
I already explained it. Intelligence, will, emotion. For some reason, it was insufficient for Daniel. He was trying to incorporate other things.
So the common property between our minds and God's minds is intelligence.
Intelligence, will, emotion is what I stated.
Will and motion? What?
Emotion, correct.
Oh, okay. So are those exactly the same?
It's irrelevant. He's asking for the common property.
They're not exactly the same. They're not a common property.
And just like the other common property that he's trying to attribute to an animal mind, they are not exactly the same, Haiti. You have the same.
Listen, just because we don't know the extent to which an animal would have a belief or a desire of some type, we know that animals are compelled in some way, so they do have desires, right? There's some fucking thing that's like our mind. Animals have desires. They're compelled to eat. They're compelled to reproduce. Their mind is furnished with desires of a sort. Who knows what type of beliefs? Maybe they don't have beliefs. Who knows what type of memory? We don't know. But at least with an animal, we can point to something that is analogous. In your case, you have nothing. You have nothing in virtue of which the analogy holds between the mind of man and the mind of God, or mind as we know it and the mind of God. You've not named a single property, so you may as well not even call it mind.
So in other words, you acknowledge that you don't know the mind of an animal for what you can see, but you have this irrational expectation for us to understand the mind that we cannot see.
No, you're the one saying that God is a mind, right? It's not me. I'm asking you to defend what your claim is.
Equivocating.
Yeah, John, I think when we look at other animals...
Actually, that's what Daniel's doing.
No, you're saying that the word mind doesn't mean the same thing when applied to God as when applied to humans.
And no. What Daniel's saying is that this is about a mind, and I said, is that true of animals? And Daniel the characteristics he described with regard to mind does not apply to animals. Thus, he is equivocating.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're denying that you're equivocating. Is that right?
He is denying that, and he's using two different senses of the same word here.
So, John, intelligence, I just looked at a definition, the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. Is that the kind of intelligence God?
I wouldn't attribute God to acquiring information.
In what sense has he got as the common property?
I would say in the sense of possessing information, which is different than acquiring information.
So intelligence to you. So when it's humans, we acquire information. That's intelligence.
Well, I would say that we possess intelligence.
God already has, no, we have the ability to acquire information, but obviously that wouldn't be the case with God, right? Because he already has all the information. So what's intelligent about God?
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't agree with the definition of
Give me another
acquiring
definition of intelligence then. One that applies to
possessing information.
Humans.
So you are
possessing.
No, because someone can possess information and not be intelligent. It's the acquiring of it that makes them intelligent. That they can get the information and use it.
I mean, you just
hang on. Can a computer download information?
No, computers are not intelligent. That's why we have something called artificial.
That's not what I asked.
Okay.
When you say intelligent, you're just describing omniscience.
Yeah. I just asked a simple question. Can a computer acquire information?
I asked you.
Either yes or no.
I asked you the definition of intelligence. You said it was having all the information. You're just describing omniscience, right?
Or a computer, because a computer has all the information.
Well, actually, it doesn't. It has to be put into it. I mean, a computer by itself.
Right.
You should ask Don what he thinks distinguishes a computer from a human mind.
Well, a computer doesn't have emotion.
Yeah, but God doesn't have emotion.
We're talking about intelligence here, little buddy.
Yeah, I just don't see how you're saying intelligence, but you mean omniscience, and that is equivocation.
You said something earlier about humans and acquiring information. For some reason, you understood it as acquiring all information.
No, I didn't.
Answer Hades' question from before. Just answer Hades' question from before, right? What does intelligence mean? You never answered that question.
I actually did. She said she read a definition. She read a definition about acquiring information.
The ability.
And what I said was that it was sort of possessing information. That was the distinction I was trying to.
Right. So possessing information is intelligence. That's what you think it means.
So a hard drive, like my hard drive that I just disconnected from my computer.
Yeah, and what Haiti read off as her definition could be also attributed to computer or hard drive.
Yeah. Wait, yes? The answer is yes, my hard drive is intelligent? My hard drive's sitting on my desk.
Yeah, you're missing the point. That was Haiti's definition. That was her definition, John.
No. Of course that wasn't her definition.
What was her definition, Sean? Do you know? I know.
Acquiring knowledge, the ability to increase, to attain knowledge.
She didn't use the word knowledge, sir.
The ability to acquire
information.
Hang on. To acquire information, and there was another one. Hold on, and apply knowledge and skills. The ability to acquire information and apply knowledge and skills. Don't say it's Hades' definition like I pulled it out of my ass. Okay. It's the
I understand.
I'm
trying to say the source that you brought. That's what I meant.
Who cares?
Come on.
Who cares?
I'm not saying. What I'm saying is that
by your lights.
What I'm saying is that her definition.
A hard drive is intelligent.
This is.
No, not by her lights. By your lights. No one accepts that. Right? It's absurd.
It could be applied to a hard drive.
No, according to you, no, it can't. A hard drive cannot acquire knowledge and apply it to skills. It's not what a hard drive. That's absurd. A hard drive can't acquire information either. It has information put onto it.
Like John Lee is like confusing. Well, he's going to equivocate between knowledge and information,
which is just absurd, right? Like just reductio ad absurdum. It's just like
John Lee. So what exactly?
Impossible.
Yeah, okay. So, John Lee, what exactly is your view about God's knowledge?
Well, I guess Sean's trying to say acquire information and download information are not the...
The computer doesn't acquire it on its own. Someone else gives it to it.
Nobody here thinks computers are intelligent, John. Nobody here thinks that.
I'm not complaining.
That's reductio absurdum on your view.
Sir, I'm not trying to. Number one, I'm not trying to claim computers are intelligent.
You just did.
Okay?
You just did.
Not. No.
You just did.
Would you let me finish? Oh my God! Look, may I even finish? You guys are so triggered. May I even respond?
No, you're dodging.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so if I may speak, when Haiti read the definition of intelligence, I said very simply that it can also be attributed to a computer. Artificial intelligence, if you want to describe that, then let's go right ahead, right? We're talking about acquiring, and I said, hang on, may I finish? And then when I said that it could be download, now you guys are arguing semantics.
Why are you asking about computers, though? I don't get it.
I'm saying the way that you define intelligence, Haiti, your source,
your definition,
and apply to computers is all I said.
So what?
Those are by you.
Why is that a problem, John?
We're asking you why the common property of intelligence between God and humans. Computers are a red herring. So your definition of intelligence for God is just possessing knowledge.
And yours was acquiring knowledge.
Is your
right?
definition for intelligence in
humans? So I'm going by your definition, right?
It's not.
You asked me the question about intelligence as it pertains to God.
Yeah.
When I think of God, I do not think of God as acquiring information.
Okay, right, good. So we agree. We're getting somewhere. Your definition for God is possessing knowledge. That's your definition of God's intelligence.
Sure.
So what is the common property between human intelligence and God's intelligence? Is it just possessing knowledge?
Same thing, possessing knowledge. There you go. There, thank you, Haiti. Now we're done.
Yeah, that's not sufficient for knowledge. No one here is going to accept that that's sufficient for knowledge.
Because
no one with a brain would accept that.
You could be someone who could just like memorize facts, right? But if you don't know what they mean, are you intelligent as a human? Because I would say no, because you're not. I did.
No, not understanding. Why not?
It might that I never listen. I said it was acquiring knowledge and then using it to apply those skills, right? Using the knowledge.
Why can't it be possessing knowledge and using it?
Oh my God! Look, I could be taught like, addition, right? But if I can't go to the store and figure out what the change is, then that knowledge does not constitute intelligence. I'm just a database.
Yeah, I reject the proposition that intelligence necessarily implies acquiring. That's all.
So that you're using a non-standard definition of intelligence. So we're clear on that, right? You're using one that's different than it's commonly understood.
How do you
without acquiring it? He's a cosmic Roomba, which does just have knowledge and works like a hard drive. So
how did humans possess knowledge without acquiring it?
So, I mean, when you talk about artificial intelligence, you're going to say that's a mind? Is that what we're...
No. I'm asking you...
No, are you sure? Are you sure artificial intelligence is not...
You're just obfuscating. How do humans get to possess knowledge without acquiring it? That's the question on the table, because you don't think intelligence has anything to do with acquiring knowledge.
Well, as far as humans, yes, because our knowledge is acquired from God Himself, who has all knowledge and revealed it to us. That's how I understand how we acquire knowledge, right? But God possesses knowledge, and humans possess knowledge only because God reveals it to us. But that doesn't mean that we have intelligence. I would say that God has intelligence as well. And so the acquisition or acquiring is not relevant to my understanding. And then Noah's trying to imply that that is a non-standard definition.
Well, you're just equivocating. You're saying that intelligence for humans means this. It means this. It's just equivocation on the word. You don't have a common definition for both God and human.
He did say one. He did say one time that God has a will without any desires. You should explore that claim. John Lee.
Another definition, Haiti, is the ability to learn, which is acquiring. Or hang on, man, finish, sir. It's, another definition is the ability to learn or understand. Now, understand is acquisition.
Look, you can't get away from the problem you're in. You said.
What are you talking about? You reject understand?
Listen, you didn't answer my question or my comment. I said you're equivocating on intelligence because for God it means this and for humans it means that, right? Now you have to deal with that.
Well, the definition says the ability to understand. Understanding does not require acquisition of the data or information, right? And so that's a standard definition, Mo, right? A primary definition. And it has a disjunction there, right? An exclusive disjunction.
So now you're saying that now there's a new definition of intelligence, the ability.
There's no new definition. It's just
yeah, you're interested in a new one. You're interested in a new definition, yeah. Now
I didn't like.
Oh my God, why are you interrupting me? Fine, let's go with the definition of understanding, right? In virtue of what does God understand things?
So do you have a problem with the ability to understand? Do you have a problem with that?
How is that answer to my question?
It's either a yes or no that you agree with the. I mean, look, I'm trying to find.
John.
Brady, I'm trying to find a common ground for agreement of what intelligence represents. I'm claiming that it's the ability to understand. Mm-hmm. You either agree with it or you don't.
Look, definitions are arbitrary. Any definition you want to use, you're going to have to show how it's the same with God and humans. Now, how is God? Do you
disagree with?
Did you not understand what I just said?
You're not answering. You're not good with questions. You know that. I just simply asked you, do you agree with the definition of intelligence as the ability to understand?
Definitions are arbitrary. It doesn't matter whether it's your definition.
Oh, now it doesn't matter.
Not sure about that.
Look, it's your view. You can use you can say intelligence is cheesecake, right? And then we just figure out if both God and humans are made of fucking cheesecake.
Listen,
I don't care.
Katie, you're trying to prescribe acquisition. You were like hell bent on that prescription, and now I found another source that's describing understanding, and now you want to avoid it with a 10-foot pole.
I'm not debating the definition of intelligence with you. I will grant any definition.
That's exactly what you were doing.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
And then you had Mo saying that's not a standard definition.
I'm not Mo.
I gave him a standard. I gave you and him a standard definition. Okay.
Well, back
ability to understand.
You just dodging.
Yeah. Look, man. How are they the same in people and in God?
Any definition you want.
The ability to understand. I don't know why that's so difficult.
Right. So let's explore
both humans and God understand that they have the ability to do so. Thus, they are intelligent. So we have a problem with that.
What's God understanding? No, I don't have a problem with that. What's God understanding?
There you go. Why did it take you 10 minutes to say you don't have a problem?
Because now you're going to say, I agree with that definition. I don't even care. I'm just going with any definition you choose, right? So you're not going to go back in 10 minutes and say, you agreed that's what intelligence means. No, I don't, right? Do you understand that?
So you don't agree the ability to understand represents intelligence.
Are we going to have to go through what an internal critique is again?
John, why don't you just say that God doesn't have any proper parts or something, and mental states are proper parts?
Well, that's divine simplicity. No, that's a red herring.
Well, it could make your position easier.
I'm not trying to make it easier. I'm just trying to move forward.
It would make it easier to understand.
What does God understand? Does he understand the external world?
Yes, he understands the external world.
Does he understand in the same way that humans understand?
So we have 20 questions?
Well, look, it's your definition. We're granting with it. We're going with it. Let's really.
There you go. That's what I was hoping that you would do.
Now we've done
but
that.
You were pretty Nazi about acquiring, how it must be understood this way. Now you seem more amenable to other understanding.
You're dodging again.
No, you don't realize that you're the one trying to force it, trying to assert. You were trying to accuse me of equivocation. Yeah, and that once that failed, now you're willing to move forward.
This isn't an argument with your girlfriend.
When I accused you of equivocation, you just came up with another definition. So let's work with that definition. I'm fine with that.
Sure, okay. That's what I was hoping.
Great.
I was trying to move forward.
Does God and humans understand the external world in the same way?
No, not in the same way.
Great, you're equivocating again.
No, I'm not equivocating again.
But to be fair, the
point is that the way in which one understands is not dependent upon the fact that we understand, right? And so the way that humans understand is that God, who possesses all knowledge, reveals it to us, makes it known to us.
So what's the difference?
Right? And then we have the external world around us. Now, when it comes to God's knowledge, it is not dependent upon the external. It's not through observation or anything like that.
Nobody said anything about that.
Well, I'm saying something.
Right. So by human
Well, what's the difference between the way I understand
Apple and
the way God
understands what
Apple is?
You're not even involved in this conversation.
Go ahead. What's the difference? Go ahead. What's the difference between what I understand, 2 + 2 = 4, and how God understands 2 + 2 = 4?
I'm not going to engage you, Darn idiot.
There you go. Yeah, tap out.
Well, I'm not engaging any. I'm just saying that it doesn't follow from the fact that if God and human beings have a different way of discerning information, that John is therefore using 2 different senses of the same word.
Well, if he's saying humans understand things via revelation, which I think he is, and God understands things by what? Then there are 2 senses of the same word, by omniscience. Yeah, that sounds like a different use of the word understanding to me. Because what we're doing is, we're acquiring information, right? That's how we understand it. We acquire information revealed by revelation, right?
Knowledge.
That was your definition of
this is the silliness you guys are doing, okay? And hang on. An animal eats.
No.
Okay, hang on. A human eats, right?
No silliness here, except your silliness.
Yeah, may I finish, sir? And so when I say, no. Hang on, an animal eats by way of hunting. Human beings eat by way of purchasing food and cooking.
Hunting isn't eating.
So therefore now you're...
No, again. Why did it do that? Every time I get an
That therefore John Lee is like using 2 different senses of the same word.
Yeah, well then you need to define
that doesn't follow.
Fine, but he never actually defined what understands mean. So go ahead,
Explain the difference between understanding and the way I understand 2 plus 2 equals 4, the way God understands 2 plus 2 equals 4. What's the difference, John?
Yeah, the stupid game you guys are playing is like an animal lead.
This is crucial. This is the crucial distinction, right?
You're not even letting me finish. Literally,
so I chew my food, and a leech sucks the blood out of a creature's body, right? So that's the distinction. Now show me the distinction between the way I understand 2 plus 2 equals 4 and the way God understands 2 plus 2 equals 4.
I am providing a distinction.
What is
that
it?
Does not necessitate.
Yes, it does.
That does not necessitate that I'm.
Yes, it does.
Hang on. It doesn't necessitate that I'm equivocating on the word.
I didn't say you equivocated. I'm asking you for the distinction.
Someone did.
I don't think you are. Who cares? Who cares? The point is,
so how many people am
I understand 2 plus 2 equals 4. How many people? There's just one right in front of you right now. That's me. How does God understand 2 plus 2 equals?
I'm
in a way that is different from how I understand 2 plus 2 equals.
Listen, I'm either defending that I'm equivocating or I'm not. I'm not going to deal with someone accusing me of equivocating and then defend it, and then someone else come at me with something else, and then Dark come at me with a third thing. I just prefer, I don't mind talking, but I prefer to talk with one person.
All right, so look, let's figure out if you're equivocating. What definition of understand?
Well, I mean, to be fair, why don't you give us an understanding of understanding? I'll give you an understanding of understanding, right? And so in other words, let's see how well you do with the terms you have an understanding of. How about that? I'll give you my view.
Stop arguing
What do you think
you're arguing with.
I resent that deeply. What is your definition of understanding that you're working with that applies to both God and humans?
Did I get muted? Awareness of...
I didn't mute you. Look, I don't know. I think maybe this muting thing is a glitch because no one of these mods are going to mute you. You were going to give us a definition of understanding that applies to both God and humans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe I wasn't muted, but maybe I didn't unmute. But my point is that the way I understand the word understanding is just an awareness of true propositions.
Right, an awareness of true propositions. So humans and God are aware of true propositions. Is that what you
think? If they understand, yes.
The understanding is you just defined understanding of awareness of true propositions. I mean, that sounds very weird.
Well, let me look up what Oxford has to say.
Okay. I mean, if someone wants to take over, that's fine. I continue to say he's equivocating because every definition he's going to use is not going to apply to God and humans. I can predict that right now.
How do you understand?
But we listen. You're trying to demonstrate what I acknowledged even before. Jack would say it's analogous all the way down. I mean, you don't have to go through this exercise to say that. That's exactly what happens. Now, the issue is whether that's a problem or not. I would certainly state that it's not a problem.
So the common properties are analogous, not equivocal, right?
Not univocal. There are equivocal, univocal, and also...
Right. So I don't see how they're common properties then.
And I would say that they are. That's the difference. That's the debate. Which is a silly debate because it really takes away from the real point of whether God is omniscient.
No, we're now discussing the common properties between God's mind and human's mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that, but here's the, and I, unlike you people, don't find the problem.
I don't think they are analogies if you're saying understand means awareness of all true propositions.
And that would be another debate.
What's the analogy?
It would be my position that they are analogous, even though the analogous properties themselves are in fact analogies.
Wow.
I don't have a problem with that. You guys may.
Okay.
But to me, it's not even that relevant.
Someone else can take over. I mean, if he's just going to do an infinite regressive analogies, I'm done.
Hey, how does
why would that be a surprise to you, Haiti? You act like you didn't notice beforehand.
I thought it was a giant waste of time. I thought you had some common property you could demonstrate.
Oh, come on. Are you thinking that I actually had some univocal understanding? You already at least
you don't
have been through these.
You explicitly stated that you had a way to differentiate them. So we saw them.
Yes, I do have a way to make distinctions, of course. So you're either looking for distinctions or you look.
No, I was looking for common properties, and instead I got a load of nonsense. So someone else can take over. Chat, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, he wants.
He wants to say you.
Well, I was wondering how the sound is, because this headset arrived.
Oh!
Nice. Very nice.
Does it sound like there's a lot of background noise?
Better, but you could hear some background.
Yeah, but it's not as bad. Is it noise? Like, okay, let's listen. Say some stuff.
I think a loaf of bread would be a good idea.
Much better. I feel like the background is muted.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Stand in front of a car alarm.
Someone needs to ping Tom. He's probably asleep.
So he has to sleep.
Okay, so Jack, did you hear me trying to figure out
his channel also?
Jack, did you hear me trying to talk to John about the common properties between God's mind and human minds? And he came up with intelligence, and then he didn't like the definition of acquiring knowledge and applying skills. So then he came up with another definition, which was understanding.
I don't mind application.
I said, what do you mean by understanding? And he said, awareness of true propositions. So that's where we got to.
Yeah, I mean, I actually looked it up. It says comprehension, which is actually a better definition for understanding than awareness. But it's similar, but it's better to be a little bit more precise.
So
but the main point is this. The main point is this, okay? I've seen people here trying to defend omniscience all morning, right? And they were actually engaging in the topic of omniscience with me. It's like they're trying to go talk about something other than what people were talking about, which is omniscience.
Okay,
I would claim that it is not impossible for God to be omniscient. That's my claim. I don't know why we're not discussing.
So, Jack, the common property in John's view between God's mind and human minds is comprehension. Okay, what do you think of that?
Well, it's just an analogy, and it's an analogy that bottoms out in nothing.
That's my point. We don't dispute that. So I don't even know why, And it's not the case that we need to understand something precisely, univocally, or so forth. It's just, I think to just get the gist of it is sufficient, right? I understand that philosophers desire precision, but we're talking about a finite mind, a finite being, infinite being. I'm sorry, and so for us to grasp it is unreasonable to even attempt to fully grasp the infinite.
But you don't even partially grasp it. That's the point.
I would disagree. I think there is revelation as pertains.
But we've already been over this, right? So if I say the word blah blah, and I say, oh, blah blah is analogous to knowledge, and you say, oh, really? So what's the common property? And I say, truth. And then you say, oh,
is truth and analogically predicated as well? You say yes. Okay, so what's the common property between blah blah truth and human truth, right? And you say, I don't know, propositionality. And then I say, oh, well, it's propositionality being analogically predicated there. And you say yes. So what's the common property there? If it keeps, if it never bottoms out in anything, right, you just have an equivocation between one term that you understand, another term you don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, again, we talk about omniscience, this is a unique quality for God and God only, right? There's no reason to say the omniscience of people and the omniscience of God. There's no equivocation in the term here. So the question is, what is omniscience? Is God omniscient? No, I understand what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying as far as the analogous properties to human beings. But once again, that's a separate topic. That's a separate topic.
It's with respect to what omniscience, how omniscience is analyzed. So if it means something like knows all true propositions, and then we ask, well, what does know mean there, right? And it turns out that's equivocal, right? That's why there isn't even partial understanding.
Right, and so to me, it's irrational to have an expectation of fully understanding the understood. I do think that
there isn't even a partial understanding.
I think we can obtain a sufficient understanding.
It doesn't make any sense.
He couldn't give me not one.
If the main complaint is that the understanding of omniscience leads to infinite regress of analogies, I'm okay with that. So infinite regress of analogies does not represent any contradiction. No, there's no contradiction in an infinite regress of analogies.
The contradiction is, no. The contradiction is to say that you're doing something other than equivocating between one term that you know the meaning of and one term you don't.
Yeah, there's still no contradiction there.
Right, so you agree that what you're doing is equivocating between a term that has one meaning that you know and another meaning that you don't.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to call it equivocation, I don't have a problem with equivocation are not necessarily wrong, right?
Just saying.
As long as we're using it
you might as well say nonsense. When you say God is omniscient, you might as well just say a nonsense word, like God is blah blah. You're not communicating anything more.
Equivocation to me is only a problem when you're attempting to use it. If you're not attempting to use it.
The problem is not equivocation. The problem is that you're not saying anything.
And so,
equivocation is not a problem. Equivocation doesn't have to be a problem, right? If you say, well, I'm using it in this sense here and I'm using it in that sense there. What you're doing, right, is saying I'm using the word dog. I'm using the word dog to mean, a four-legged mammal of the genus Canis or whatever. Here, and then I'm using it to mean blah blah there, and nobody knows what blah blah means. That's the.
Well, I would say this, okay? I came in here to hear an argument for omniscience. If they want to represent the argument, represent their own argument, or whatever, I'm certainly willing to listen to it and internally, and I'm prepared to internally critique their argument. But if you guys want me here to ask me questions, when actually the room has to do with an argument, the impossibility of omniscience, then you guys are avoiding presenting an argument and supporting your. Is anyone willing to or know this argument that Albedo posted and are they willing to defend it? That's and if the objection is something about analogies all the way down, and I suspect it doesn't, it's not really relevant to the argument.
You're breaking up.
Well, what I'm saying is, if the argument is not relevant to analogies all the way down, then it's not really relevant.
Well, what does that even mean, not relevant to analogies all the way down? What do you mean?
What did you? Yeah.
I'm saying if the argument in the pinned link, if the argument is not about analogies all the way down.
What's that? What
does anyone
talking about?
Does anyone know what the argument is, first and foremost?
That's not really an argument that I pinned. It's just like a collection of ideas about why omniscience. I mean, there's it's got various. Why are you interrupting me? It's not a syllogism or anything. It's just I thought it would be interesting to read. That's it.
So a claim of impossibility first.
I mean, it's a really long thing. What do you want? Someone to read it out to you? Or just read it.
A bunch of opinions. I mean, so you're saying it's not an argument.
Oh, there's a difference.
There's no inferences. It's claiming possibility.
Why are you like this? If you want,
Isn't
you want someone
horrible for anyone else?
Yeah, it is horrible.
Yeah, I apologize.
Hold on. Okay, so what you're saying is you want a syllogism that, with the conclusion. Oh, now James is doing it. You want a syllogism with the conclusion omniscient minds are impossible. Is that what you want?
I'm not. Sure, I'll take one.
Okay.
Anybody have one? I mean, or do you want to snivel about analogies all the way down when it's not even a problem?
Jack explained why it was a problem. Just saying it's not a problem for me is not really informative. You could say contradictions are not a problem for me, right? I mean, that doesn't, so what? It just means people would think you're irrational.
Well, some people are down EPS, and they'll probably ask you what's the problem.
Look, you're just breaking up.
John, nobody can understand you. I mean, audibly and content-wise.
I don't understand the argument. Do you understand the argument of impossibility? Well, if there's no inference, what is it? Is it a series of opinions, a long-winded opinion?
Look, either I read it out to you, or you read it yourself, or you just stop talking about it. Those are the three options.
I've heard no arguments for many hours. I just heard. Right? Yes, I actually have read it, but then my point is, well, I'm asking someone to argue it so I could defend it, or basically internally.
Why don't you just critique what you say you've read? If you've read the whole thing, what do you disagree with?
So no one here has an argument.
Oh, we're not even aware as to what your claim is.
Well, I'm aware that there's a claim that omniscience is impossible, Doug. Would you like to?
Omniscient minds are logically impossible.
Is that what we've been arguing for the last 4 fucking hours?
No, not really. We've been arguing.
My whole point.
The last. Oh my God.
No, actually, that's not true, Edie. It actually was argued for the first 3 hours. When I got here, finally, after just sitting and listening, now you guys want to go somewhere else to something Jack and I discussed days ago, or whatever you want to discuss. Anything about what you've been trying to discuss with all the other theists up here, which is the impossibility of.
What was your response to Jack's? I'm presuming that Jack rendered the internalist argument against omniscience. What's your response to that?
He did not, actually. He barely.
I don't think John is gonna get it, Haiti. It's no point.
Are you saying that Jack's internalist argument for omniscience is represented in that link, or is it just a different argument altogether?
I didn't even click the link.
Rashad created a room about atheism and philosophy, but
two things he doesn't know anything about.
It's called Will Atheism Ruin Philosophy?
He thinks it already has, so I don't know why he's creating that room title.
But, I do sit here sometimes for hours and listen to you guys interact with theists. I almost never see a theist bring up Bible verses. It seems like they're just winging it, and it's a little bit frustrating sometimes.
John Lee, how many atheists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
The answer is it doesn't matter. They'll still be in the dark.
I like that one. I was going to say, first you have to convince them that the light bulb exists.
Yeah.
Hey, James, did you know that there are Hondas in heaven?
I missed it. What was that, bud?
James, did you know that there are Hondas in heaven?
No.
It says the angels all sang in one accord.
I like that one.
James, you were talking earlier about Jonah and Moses and Abraham, and do you think you could flesh that out a little bit more? I was interested in hearing what you were, or at least trying to understand what you were trying to.
I pulled up the chunk in the book. Let me pull. So, with respect to the situation as it exists in the moment, if the situation changes, then of course God's attitude or expression or intention will also change. This is just saying that God responds differently to different situations. And then it goes into the example of Jonah. Jonah preaching to Nineveh is helpful here. God sees the wickedness of Nineveh, sends Jonah to proclaim. Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. The possibility that God would have withheld judgment if the people repented is not explicitly mentioned in Jonah's proclamation as recorded in Scripture, but it is, of course, implicit in the warning. The purpose or proclamation of the warning is to bring about response. Once people repented, the situation was different, and God responded differently to the situation. And there's a few more things in the book, but so what I'm trying to flesh out is that God is giving us what we need in the moment to get a desired outcome. And so his expression fits the situation of repentance or non-repentance, for example.
What you just read, it sounds like he never did change his mind, even though it's not supposed to be stated. That's what seems to be saying.
Yeah, I don't think that God, in the sense of who he is, ever changes his mind. But when it comes to relating to us, that is explaining the expression to the situation. Meaning that if we do A, this is God's response. When we stop doing A, this is also God's response.
So, do you agree that God never intended to destroy Nineveh?
Yeah, I don't think that he intended to do it.
And so he never changed his mind. He never changed his intentions, right?
Okay, I think I figured out the problem. Sorry, when you two are done.
Go ahead.
Well, in order to make an argument that omniscient minds are impossible, we have to have a shared agreement on what a mind is, right? And that's why we spend hours asking you, what is a mind, right? Because I would say, let's say a mind contains intentional states, and you'd be like, no, they don't, right? But then we'd say, well, what do you think that God's mind is? And then we went down the infinite analogy route. So that's why we started talking about it. Because I would say that omniscience is contradictory with intentional states. But you're just going to say, well, God doesn't have, I don't agree with your conception of a mind as containing intentional states.
So the statement is we don't agree with what minds are?
Yes.
Rather than, well, then why isn't that this discussion? The problem with the mind of God or something like that, rather than...
That's how...
no, I'm talking about the title. I'm talking about the title.
The title, look, I don't know why I'll just remove the fucking link. Let's just say I never did it, okay? You're just being, like, petty about a stupid link. I thought it was an interesting article, right? So I'm removing the link, right? And I'm saying that in order to show a contradiction between omniscience and being a mind, you have to define something about what the mind is, right? And you are unable to do it because all you have is analogies that lead to more analogies that lead to more analogies. So that's why we spend all this time. So you can't actually ask for an argument about why omniscient minds are impossible because you're just going to say, well, that's not what a mind is. But hang on. But you can't actually give your own definition of what God's mind is.
Yeah, I mean, with respect to mind, agency, I mean, all of these types of words, I mean, I'm the first to tell anybody, I've been saying it for years, the only way to talk about God is analogically, right? And so if you want to have a conversation from that statement, you can debate whether it is possible to talk about it or not, but then try to demand some type of univocal understanding when my initial statement is the only way one could talk about God is analogically, then why even try to force in the univocal understanding?
Yeah, so basically God's mind is just a mystery, and so convenient for you, there is no contradiction to be had between P and not P because you're not saying what the bloody P is.
And thus atheism has nothing to demonstrate.
When he says that you can only talk about God analogically, that is itself an analogy. Because by analogy, he doesn't mean analogy. He means something analogous to analogy. And it turns out when you ask what it is in virtue of which it's an analogy with an analogy, you end up with a bottomless series of analogies. So I don't even know why he uses the word analogy. He might as well say shmanalogy, But really, he's just equivocating between one sense that's comprehensible and another sense which he doesn't even know the meaning of. So it's just pure obfuscation to talk about analogy.
So how about this then? I can always revise my language. Non-univocally, how about that?
Well, it's just equivocation.
Wait a minute. I think non-univocal may include analogy, but doesn't necessitate analogy. Would that?
Well, people sometimes.
Oh, again, what happened there? Did they end the... No, they didn't end the room.
Well, equivocal predication is presumably just equivocation.
Oh, Matt gone?
Which is different than univocal?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know there was a third one called the equivocal predication.
You learn something new every day, John.
I do, hanging out with you guys here. I'm not even that big on philosophy as it is. You guys are the philosophy geeks. You know, it's like you hang out with science geeks, you pick up a...
You're a Jesus geek.
I am. And sometimes I like to discuss scripture with other theists, but sometimes they're not with.
Well, sometimes I think that instead of Jesus, we should say Shmeezus.
Oh, wow. I don't know about that. I think Jesus on one end is not that difficult, you know, in the sense that he's understood as God incarnate, and what is represented by the Son of God and some of these other attributes, you know, like truth, for example, that's a whole other discussion. But I think Jesus, as a person, is not that difficult.
So, Jack, I mean, I don't know what to do now, because John's basically saying God has a mind, but he won't define it, so we can't figure out if there's a contradiction between the mind that John understands and omniscience. So what do you do now? Where do you go from here?
No, this is the thing. I can describe to the best of my ability as to what the... Hang on.
Spend 3 hours. You cannot.
May I even finish?
No, because you're lying.
I can May I even finish? Okay, so I can, to the best of my ability, describe what a mind is as it pertains to God, but all I hear is sniveling about, but that's not a human mind, eh?
Yeah, go ahead. What's God's mind then? Go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, God's mind is that represented, which is similar to a human mind in that we are made in God's image, right? So we begin there that God's mind is unique.
No common property, zero, between God's minds and human minds. You cannot make the claim that they're similar. All you had was analogies that went to another analogies that went to another analogies. So you've already failed.
What do you think an image of God represents?
You tell me. I have no fucking idea.
Who knows?
I asked you for a common property, right? And you couldn't do it. So describe God's mind. Go ahead.
Yes, so human minds are made in the image of God's mind. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
That the human minds are God's minds. That's what that...
I don't care. You said you'd tell me what God's.
So then we look to what God's mind is. Well, God is a mind that has intelligence, will, emotion.
No, wait a minute. Right? Wait a minute. By intelligence, you mean comprehension?
Something that's not human, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Wow. So your definition of God's mind is comprehension, but not in the human way.
Correct. All of them are not in a human way. Every single description is unique to God.
Yeah. What do I do?
I mean, you can't criticize a view that's unintelligible.
That's also true.
Right. So I can just say it's unintelligible. Okay. Oh, well, congrats to you. Your view's unintelligible, so I can't criticize it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, just imagine a blind man trying to criticize a rainbow. He's never.
A rainbow's not a view. Well, it is in a certain sense, but it's not a position on a claim. Whatever. I'm done. This is a waste.
A rainbow that does not manifest in reality is indistinguishable from a rainbow that does not exist. That's unintelligible.
John, for someone who's just spent 3 hours proving that you have no ability to explain God's mind, that your view is unintelligible by your own lights, I don't think you get to be mocking others.
Well, I'll tell you what, for someone who can see a rainbow, can only do his best to describe to a blind person who is irrational and willfully ignorant of what a rainbow represents.
Yeah, right. We're done. We can move on.
Good point, John.
But it's always interesting to hear a blind man tell us how rainbows don't exist, because they see no reason to believe one exists.
Yeah, keep crowing, because your view is so unintelligible it's impossible to criticize. That's a real win. Good.
Yeah, the blind man said, it's impossible to criticize rainbows because it's so unintelligible.
I have to admit, it's really hilarious to hear John trying to mock.
Thank you, Jack. No, but honestly, Jack, my position is this, okay? God is spirit, John 4:24. The person without the spirit cannot understand the things of the spirit and considers them foolishness because they're spiritually discerned, and that's 1 Corinthians 2:14. And so I don't have this great ambition to convince people so that they can understand what the Scripture clearly says they cannot understand without the.
Yeah, that's cope. So Jack, what do you think of dialetheism? If I'm saying it right, because Truthy pulled that card out, and it seemed to be a get out of jail free card.
Yeah, I wouldn't really be able to understand what it would mean to believe something if you weren't committed to not believing it's contradictory. So I don't really find dialetheism intelligible, basically. I can understand it as a purely formal kind of concept, but if somebody wanted to say, well, maybe it's the case that there are really true contradictions, I just don't find that to be an intelligible.
Could it be argued, Jack, that sometimes things are contradictory, maybe like a liar's paradox? Not that all things are contradictory?
No, that's what dialetheists hold. They don't say that every true proposition is a contradiction. I'm sorry, that every contradiction is true. They're just saying it's true. So they might say the liar sentence is an example of something that's...
I said something to that effect, not as eloquently as you, of course. And he did a T-jump and appealed to some philosopher, take it up.
Yeah, well... Yeah, I mean, people like Graham Priest are really brilliant guys, so it's not easy to... I mean, he's a very charitable person, but it's not easy to debate with somebody about... Well, in fact, my philosopher I admire the most, Kil Bilgrami, says you can't argue with somebody who denies the law of non-contradiction.
Wait, Jack, is that you on the news?
Yeah, how does it sound?
You also can't.
Sounds amazing.
It does,
great.
really?
Yeah, are you, where are you?
I'm in Panera. I mean, I could try putting on the other headset to compare it, but it's probably no different from, I mean, you know what it normally sounds like, so.
Yeah, like I can sort of hear a little bit of music, but you can't hear the words of the music, which is great.
Yeah, but we're in Panera a lot, so we do have like something to compare it to, and the music is definitely louder.
Okay.
Jack, you also can't talk to someone who denies the love excluded middle. That's why we don't allow Detroyer on stage anymore.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, this is good for Daz's channel. Daz had to like throw away recordings that he really liked because the audio quality was so bad.
It's not to mention that, but like they scan your video, so when you're like yelling at me, for example, and there's "Hit Me Baby One More Time" playing in the background,
that's another issue.
Yeah, tags it and says you can't monetize this thing at all. Britney Spears ends up getting paid for you yelling at a theist if they let him keep it at all.
It's good for Pete's channel. Shout out to
It does
Pete.
sound really good. Sounds good.
I mean, it's a little quiet, but I'm sure you'll
I might
be shouting.
I might be able to move the mic closer. But how long is the battery supposed to last?
Well, I have the same one, and I did a 13-hour night shift yesterday, and I had about a quarter left.
Oh,
maybe
that's very
16 hours or something.
Oh, that's a really long time. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm listening to stuff like all night, so it's like constantly in use.
What kind of headset is that, Daz?
It's OpenCom, Shox OpenCom.
Shox OpenCom. Okay.
It was about £150 for me, so maybe $190.
It's 1-to-1 these days, Daz. Don't you know the euro and the? Well, you go by pounds, right?
Yeah. You said like 190 pounds, and I'm like, that'll probably be Christmas, if not mid next year.
Well, I'm for crowdfunding anybody who's like a regular. If we can like crowdfund people headsets, that'd be good.
For that, I wouldn't ask for that. I've got like the little Apple hard wires, and I think people can hear me good enough sometimes.
But if we all get the same headset, we could like make a little call center.
That's true.
How does that bone conduction thing sound? Is that all right?
Yeah, it's a little quiet when I'm driving, but I can just stick the little pads in my ears, so it's a lot louder. But if I'm not driving my truck, yeah, it sounds really good. Well, ask Jack. I mean, he's not driving a truck, so he might know better. Are we loud for you, Jack?
Well, you can control the volume.
I know that, yeah. But I mean, it doesn't go in your ear. The pads don't go in your ear, so like the sound's
but
the
you
same.
can make them pretty loud. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do like other people hear what you're hearing?
I don't know. You'd have to ask.
I think if it's full, you can sort of hear the vibrations, like the sound vibrations, but you can't clearly hear it, no.
Okay, so Jack, I'd like to hear what do you think is the single greatest criticism as to why God can't be omniscient? I mean, the discussion of God's mind is not like human minds is one thing, but being that God is a mind, what would be your criticism?
Well, I think God, I have to think about, I think the best objections have to do with the idea of God knowing the future is inconsistent with him being an agent, but you might be able to get around that by being some kind of open theist. But I don't think open theism is really makes that much sense either, but I guess it would be a little bit more, maybe it would be a little bit more.
Well, I mean, that's heretical first and foremost, but what Dog was telling me, and he didn't explain why, he says if God is an agent, he has to be fallible and uncertain. These are the two things that agents must be according to him. He didn't really say why, though.
Well, I can try to see if I can, sort of a subtle idea, but I guess one way to think about it is, think about when you engage in deliberation, right? For that to be deliberation at all, you have to sort of not know the outcome of your deliberation in advance, right? So deliberation is only an intelligible concept if you're attempting to discover something you don't know, which is what you have most reason to do, right? And so, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, now, in terms of God, I don't see God considering two different propositions. I just consider God acting in a way toward his plan, and he decrees that, and it comes to effect, and doesn't fail to come to effect. And so when I think about humans, they are not omniscient, so then they have to take certain information, they have attitudes, they have beliefs, and they have to justify it because they don't have the omniscience. And so they do deliberate, and that I don't think it's fair to say that God deliberates in that.
Every time I get an email.
You mean like a mechanism?
Exactly, like a mechanism.
And you don't think that God can not have that deliberative process like a human being and still not be a mechanism? You don't see that as possible?
Right, yeah. So unless he is like some kind of open theist, unless you're some kind of, well, I have a lot of problems, because open theism involves libertarian free will, so I kind of don't think libertarian free will makes any sense. But I mean, if you had a view of something like that, the future contingent propositions, maybe there is a way you could get it to work. If you had the view that future contingent propositions were neither true nor false, and so therefore God knows all true and false propositions, so he's not going to know whether some future fact is true or false, because it doesn't have a truth value until it occurs. You might say that's consistent. You might want to say that's omniscience, because it's not like there are any propositions out there that are either true or false that God doesn't know.
Yeah, I mean, as a theist, I would claim that God knows before it even happens. Like, some people think that you can only know once it happens. I don't.
I mean, I guess you don't necessarily need libertarian free will, do you? You just have to think that there's indeterminism. So I guess if you had a view like that, where you thought facts about the future are neither true nor false, contingent facts about the future are neither true nor false, and God doesn't know those, then he could be omniscient on some construals of omniscience.
Yeah, but isn't that just redefining what omniscience is classically understood as?
Actually, Aristotle, this view goes back to Aristotle, and that's several hundred years. I mean, I have to look into exactly when omniscience was first sort of clearly theorized. But
so, are you saying that Aristotle understood omniscience to be only knowledge of only things that have occurred already?
Well, I'm just saying that he thought that future contingent propositions were neither true nor false. I think that was his view.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
And so, if somebody had said, well, can God know the future? He probably, if God knows all things, can he know the future? He would probably have said, well, obviously he can't know facts. He can't know propositions about future contingent events because those are neither true. The facts about those are neither true nor false.
So foreknowledge is not even a word to him. In other words, it's not a coherent concept to him?
No, the idea is...
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, the idea that he wanted to say is that God obviously can't know something that isn't true theft. So all future contingent propositions are theft. And so the agent, namely God, can't know them. But that doesn't mean that he isn't omniscient. He's just omniscient.
No, and he even has some foreknowledge because, well, he has foreknowledge of all true theft propositions, which presumably involve
that's right.
Necessary facts about the future, I guess.
But only
some contingent propositions.
So not all propositions, just necessary propositions.
I mean, maybe there are some facts about the future that are contingent that could be known. I'd have to think about whether there's a way. I mean, probably a Detroiter would have an answer to this. I'd have to think about it. But he could certainly know anything that's necessary. That's about the future.
Now, if the Bible claims sort of foreknowledge of things that have not even come to pass, and describe exactly what will happen and so forth, are you saying that's philosophically that's probably?
Well, I'm just saying that I think if omniscience in the traditional understanding seems to pose a problem for God having agency and, to my mind, intentionality. So there's kind of a dilemma, which is you could either, if you want to, you could either sort of give up, you could preserve that kind of robust concept of omniscience at the cost of God becoming being a mechanism, or you could try to preserve God's agency and evolve a modified conception of omniscience.
Or what about a modified conception of agency?
I'm not exactly sure how that would go. I don't really see what the route is there to do that. But yeah, probably a lot of Christians do take a view like that. They want to say God is not an agent in the same way that human beings are, and so they have to try to offer some account where there's something intelligible being said about God that, you know, relates to human agency in a way and is different in other ways. I don't know if there's like a good model out there, but that's probably I would imagine the majority of Christian philosophers would take a view like that.
Now, who decides what agency represents? Just the consensus of philosophers, or is always classically understood a certain?
The person who possesses the concept even is that question. It doesn't have to be limited. God.
There you go, Matt.
God gets to do. God makes the analytic truth.
God's a prescriptivist in that sense.
Who gets to decide?
It's just that presumably you have an idea, right? Which is likely to, which it might be thought to is likely to be a common idea.
I may add to it. The way that I see it, it's like the low.
Right.
Not you. Girl,
Yeah,
go
you know.
take care of that daddy, girl.
Oh, okay.
Go take care of that daddy. I love you. Tell your daddy I said hey, okay?
All right.
Like, for real. Thank you so much, too. I want to say this. King's Kid asked me in the comment section, he said, Harold, again, do you not acknowledge Romans 10:13 through 14 if the Holy Ghost is the only thing that's supposed to teach you? So let's make this understanding. You do know that in that time, in that culture, they call it in that dispensation. In Rome, Holy Ghost had not yet been introduced into that culture, right? So it was a new situation. It's just like how the book of Acts, that was the introduction of Holy Ghost taking up residence into humanity as his temple, right? So they were introducing Holy Ghost to these people since Jesus transitioned back to the Father. In the book of Rome, you have to understand, they were not aware of the teaching regarding salvation at that time, right? Because if you go over in 1 John, the 2nd chapter, and the 27th verse, it says, but the anointing, who is giving reference to the Spirit of God, which you have received of him, abideth in you, and you need not that any man teach you, but as the same anointed teacheth you of all things, and is truth, and is no lie, he said, even as he has taught you, you shall abide in him. So yes, sir, I am stating that I don't need any other man. I don't need.
How that is spelled out, but that's sort of the basic idea. And then a related idea is that there's a corruption, right, caused by original sin. And this is a Calvinist idea too, right, because of things like total depravity. So that human minds become defective, right, because of original sin. So they're sort of like degenerate examples of some kind of more
even irrational.
The word perfect. Yeah,
I would say even irrational, right?
There's some kind of corruption of a pristine, I guess that's the word I'm looking for, a pristine mind. But obviously, even the pristine form of a human mind is going to have to be different from a divine mind, because a pristine, uncorrupted human mind, undegenerated human mind, is nonetheless not going to have some of the properties of the divine mind, like
exactly.
Omniscience. So. Yeah, so I'm sure there's like a lot of different models out there.
Greetings, family. May I speak?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm here in North Carolina. I'm currently homeless since 2019. I put my PayPal and Cash App information in the chat. Any donation of any amount you can send will be sufficient to get food and supplies. I need your help, family. Been disabled since.
Why you sell your phone?
It's prepaid sale. A library with good heart gave it to me. It was in the lost and found.
Can you sell your phone?
She let me stay at the library. And they had a lost found. And there was a prepaid sale that no one came back for. So she gave it to me. And it had 4 minutes and everything on it. I told her my situation.
How do I say your name, Shaul?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would, but the thing is, see, Jack, I used to never tip waitresses because I think it's just ridiculous that they.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they make like 3 times as much. I mean, I was a waitress at one point. They make like 3 times as much as somebody working minimum wage, but they like work a lot less hard than some people's minimum wage jobs. But I used to always give $1 or a cigarette to every single homeless person that I passed in the street or like drove by on a corner. But Jack convinced me that it's more important to tip waitresses, so I'm not going to do both. So now I just don't give money to homeless people as a principle at all anymore. I tip the waitresses instead. What do you think about that?
It's your choice. Like I said, it's not forced. It's choice. And according to your ability.
Thoughts and prayers.
I'm trying to appeal to your mercy and your compassion as a fellow human being. Just to be compassionate, considerate, and if you're able.
Hey, John.
If you're able.
John might help you. John, do you mind giving this guy a sample?
John's always giving homeless people money.
Yes, because in my PayPal and Cash App in the chat.
I told Christians were required to give charity when asked. Yeah, John, you can help him out, right? The guy who's homeless, can you make a request, like, specifically to John Lee? Can you say, John Lee, will you donate to me, please?
It's to everyone. We're fellow humans, correct?
Yeah, but if you could like do it to John Lee, that'd be great.
Or like any Christian here, James. Come on.
It's to everyone.
What are you doing?
Yes, sir.
Is there a reason why you're not going? Is there a reason why you're not going to some of the Hebrew Israelite camps, like Sakari or something like that?
Oh, he's a black Hebrew Israelite?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah, don't give him any money.
But I don't believe that all white people are the devil. I don't believe all white people are the devil. I believe that both Jew and Gentile can receive salvation if they are obedient. I don't believe all white people are the devil now.
Oh, you're kind of like Yah? I don't know if you know Yah.
I believe that the law of Moses is still binding, and that in order for us to be redeemed and reconciled to the, we must believe on Jesus the Messiah. Just I believe that we must still observe the law of Moses.
So I mean, I'm a Moabite, and so you don't leave out just like a not welcome in the assembly of the Lord forever, that kind of thing.
No, sir. Because Yeshua's sacrifice, whoso will that believes on him and obeys the commands of Yahweh the Father will be accepted with Yahweh.
Amen, John.
No respect or person.
You gonna help us, Kyle?
Just be compassionate. And any amount you send, $1, $2, or any amount.
How come your fellow Black Hebrew Israelites don't feed you and stuff?
They have no love. I'm being honest, they have no love.
I tell you what, I do a deal, right? Okay? I will donate if John doubles my donation. How about that? John, do you agree?
What kind of number we're talking about?
It doesn't matter, do you agree?
It's up to John.
It could be any amount, John. Do you agree?
Any amount could be any amount.
It could literally be any amount.
Well, let's say that could even be one penny.
Do you agree?
It could even be a penny.
So I'll make you a deal. I'm going out to a expensive restaurant tonight. If you can convince Jack, like the tip would probably be about $25 for this waitress. If you can convince Jack that you need it more than the waitress, then I'll send you the 25 instead of her.
Wow. Instead of the
why not let's get John Lee, the Christian, to provide?
I don't know what to say. All I can say is just consider our common and shared humanity. We all
I've seen you in like 2 other rooms asking before the same story.
Yes, sir. Because I'm desperate. Because I've been homeless since 2019. I'm disabled. I walk with a cane.
Now, don't you have some sort of assistance like SSI or General Relief or
I was denied.
Things like that?
I was not.
You were denied?
You walk with a cane and Social Security denied you?
Yes, ma'am. They said I didn't have sufficient enough work hours. I was about to get an attorney.
Then you get SSI. If you didn't have enough work credits to get disability, then you get Social Security supplemental income.
I believe you have to be a certain to get SSI. I'm 41. I think
So I was on Social Security SSI and I only worked like one job when I was 18 for a year, and then I got SSI.
The case worker
you wouldn't get SSDI.
You know what you should do, Sal, is get one of those attorneys that they work for free for you, and they only take money if you win the case to get Social Security.
Yeah, I'm looking there. I'm trying to find one.
When you were where? You could get like a General Relief, right?
Is this your inner
Department of Public
son?
The Department of Public Social Services. You can keep accessible food.
John, but you would rather you believe in private charity rather than the government handing out free stuff to people. I do. Right? Okay, so then what are you doing here by prescribing him to go to the social services office? Just give him, do your bidding here, John.
Joe, it's like $50, $100.
I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
I like to send my PayPal and Cash App in the chat.
Yeah, John, you can help us asking questions.
How
ask me.
Like this waitress is going to get tipped $20 to $25, and she'll have multiple other tables too. It's like she's going to be making $100 an hour. It's just insane. Like, why do people do that? Think about the waitress thing. Like, so if you order a $50 bottle of wine and the table next to you orders a $500 bottle of wine, she's making 10 times as much for the exact same service, opening a fucking bottle of wine. How does that make any sense?
I don't think most people tip that well. I think a lot of people are cheap, and they're like, here's $2. I've been here for an hour and a half, and
that depends where you work.
Get in my cup.
Not at a nice place.
I'm always of the mindset that at minimum you should be tipping at least 15%, and then if you should tip a little bit more.
Godless is probably going at a place where it's like $150 a person, bare minimum.
Yeah, those people make mad money, and most times the tips are mandatory.
Yeah, I've never been to a restaurant where it's like $150 a plate. You will have to describe that to me later, Godless. I'm just curious how that goes down.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's not. It's less than $100 a person, but for two people, it's over $100 bill.
Oh, never mind. There's a place in Milwaukee. Oh my God, it's so good. I wish I could eat there every night.
Because an expensive meal for me is like a $17 meal where I get a all-American cheeseburger, baked potato on the side.
Those guys don't make that much when you count on the fact that they don't have insurance, they don't have health benefits, they don't have a 401k, they don't have...
Yeah, I'm appealing to your common humanity.
Dividends or...
Well, they also don't have to pay as much in taxes, though, because you can just misreport your tips.
That's not a good idea.
Look, restaurants.
You legally don't even have to count. I was a waitress. You legally don't even have to count your cash tips at all.
Yeah, I did it for like 10 years. I never reported my tips.
And then I was eligible for some kind of like weird Obamacare, even though I was making a lot of money, because I didn't have to report the whole income.
You still pay a lot in taxes. If you like fudge the number, like say you just like round up 15% or whatever.
Sean, I would walk away from work feeling like I would rob a bank every night. It was just ridiculous. Like, I would be laughing at these customers.
I thought about, like, I thought to Godless, because I'm very polite, that I would make a good waiter.
But you don't do that anymore.
But I look like a troll, and trolls don't get tipped that well.
I mean, you're not a waitress anymore, right? Like,
so what?
Where would you be if you were still a waitress?
Did somebody move Tom down, or did he move down?
I was trying to mod him. I moved him down by mistake. Well, actually, waitressing is no longer that much better of a job than like other low-paying wage jobs. Because low-paying wage jobs now, it's like to work at McDonald's, you get paid $15 an hour. So before I was making triple what minimum wage people make, and now I wouldn't even be making double.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
James used to be a waitress?
A cocktail waitress on roller skates.
Tom, Jack got the headphones.
James, I didn't know you were a waitress.
I was saying that I
How does he still sound as
a waiter?
What?
Okay, first of all, I have a rule that Haiti, when I get sent down, I don't come back up. So I'll be like, Wait, you got the headphones, Jack?
Yeah, I'm on them right now, and I'm in Panera.
Are you in New York, like on the streets?
No, I'm in Panera.
I can't hear any music.
Jack, have the
let me go to
teenager
where the
behind
music
you
is louder.
play "Hit Me, Baby" one more time, just so we can test this out.
Can you move the mic closer to your...
Yeah, it's a bit quiet.
I don't know how to... You can't lengthen it, can you? I don't think there is a way to move it closer.
Oh, God.
See,
I feel like my microphone is really loud, though, isn't it?
Yeah. You're allowed to.
What's the difference?
Jack's just talking quietly.
Is there a setting or something? Is there some kind of setting for the mic?
There's not a setting, but you can obviously move the little boom mic, and the closer you kind of move it to the bottom, I guess.
The bottom?
I don't know if you have yours poking up to your eyes or poking down to your mouth.
It's on my cheek.
You want to like aim it at your mouth.
Yeah, it's aimed at my mouth.
He said.
It was louder earlier, so I don't know if you've moved it.
I wish that Jewish guy Yuri that was here earlier would come in while the Black Hebrew is. Yuri is on stage. That would be pretty funny.
Well, you sound great, and
but maybe there's some setting to boost how much of the mic.
That's louder.
It is?
Yeah, isn't it, guys?
I think it's clear. It's clear. It's great.
There's some mic gain boosts, like apps too, maybe, but I can't hear any background noise.
What's
acceptable? Yeah, but that's because the music isn't playing right now for some reason.
Yeah, but the music was playing earlier. You could like hear a little bit of it, but you couldn't hear like the lyrics, or you couldn't really get the tune of it. So
yeah, we can't name that Panera tune anymore.
Right.
Make sure the mic's not resting on your cheek. Like,
thanks to Milano for the assist on that one.
And make sure it's not resting. It should not be resting.
What did he do?
Yeah, it's not on my cheek. He
has Prime, so we made arrangements for him to do the reorder. And apparently he already had Jack's information, so it was easy for him.
Did you know that Haiti owns Amazon Prime?
He was talking about yacht clubs or something yesterday. It was just like a sickening display of
Yes, my profile pic. We had drinks at the yacht club. That's the view. Yes.
Jeff never should have cheated on Haiti.
Interesting fact, John Lee made her upset, and she refused to take care of the tenant's plumbing for a week.
Well, I want to hear what it sounds like when you go on the streets. I mean,
I'll do that in about 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, great.
Did you get a new phone?
No.
So we need you to play as close to traffic as possible.
I'm
on a side note,
I
was gonna make a new video. I worked on a video last night of the debate between Darth and Dr. Kenny Rhodes, but it came up as unmonetized, so I'm reviewing it. And in the meantime, I was gonna maybe like do another video. Remember how like your long-haired Jesus thing triggered Darth, and then you started talking to Otangelo about the Shroud of Turin of all things. Well, it seemed like at the end, Otangelo was like, yeah, well, okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. And he like completely understood Darth's argument, and then they kind of stopped talking because I think Darth thought he conceded. And then I just saw on Pine Creek Live right now, Otangelo's on there. So in the chat, I said, at Pine Creek, can you ask Otangelo if he's changed his opinion on the Shroud of Turin? And he goes, no, why should I have?
Well, you're going to have to tell Darth about that.
Yeah, exactly. So now I have to put that all together.
Tom, there's a guy in here right now. He's a fellow Christian, and he's asking for help. And John Lee is refusing to help him.
No, he's a Hebrew Israelite.
That's me, Shaul Israel.
Black Hebrew Israelite. He wants a sandwich. John Lee won't give him the sandwich.
Wow.
To anyone in the room, if you're able, according to your fellow in common humanity, any amount will be sufficient. Send $1, we'll send 50 cents, whatever you're able to send. My Cash App PayPal.
You can't send only 50 cents on Cash App. You have to send at least $1.
$1, whatever you can send.
Come on, John.
Where you can send.
John thinks that private charity will be sufficient to address poverty. So, put your money where your mouth is.
Who says I haven't done anything already?
Us.
Will you confirm, Shaul, and let us know?
So why don't you react to, everybody in here thinks that the waitress deserves it more than you. Why don't you argue with them about that?
No, because I'm not going to argue with anyone trying to make a living. She's trying to make a living, trying to survive as I am. We humans have a right to life. No human should be deprived of life.
You should tell John Lee to not send you $1, and then he might send you $1 because he has ODD.
Yeah, don't send him any money.
Yeah, John Lee, do not send Shaul in the room $1 on Cash App.
What's that? Something defiance disorder?
Yeah, oppositional defiance disorder. John Lee, you better not do it. Actually, you better not do it. In fact, I command you not to do it.
Whose phone was that?
Better not do it, John. You better not do it.
Like I said, any amount you can send.
John, think of the.
Every black Hebrew Israelite I've encountered online so far before you did hate white people, Shaul. And Jews.
Do you know that you sent me?
They're the real Jews.
Not in Israel. Do you know you sent me 3 messages already?
Who?
Shaul.
I'm here.
Did you respond to any?
I didn't know
you do,
so now.
Someone is asking.
But whatever you do, don't send him a Cash App of $1. $1, John. Don't do it.
Someone is asking, can we end the room to save the room?
Yeah, I'll end it. Okay.
Okay, there's an ambulance coming. How loud? Yeah, can you hear me over the ambulance? The ambulance just passing me.
It's definitely quiet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's better, but I still need to hear Hit Me Baby one more time. So if you could get like a teenager to play that excessively loud behind you.
It's like it's further away. You know, it's like it's in the next block.
Yeah, they're never going to be noise cancelling. They're only noise suppression.
But that's good enough.
Yeah, it's only suppressing the sound waves, so it's good. We just need a rendition of "Shut Up While I'm Talking."
Wasn't the "Shut Up While I'm Talking"? Wasn't that to Rashad? Yeah, two of the most iconic sayings have been directed at John Lee and Rashad.
What's the other one?
Well, I mean,
game over.
Game over, like.
Of course, you know.
I wasn't sure if it was that one or folded like a chair.
The sayings of Kant.
Is Godless back? I was hoping to see her continue that conversation with the black
Okay, it's
people.
very noisy now. They hit the traffic.
No, we don't hear traffic.
It's great.
Really?
I don't hear any traffic.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Your voice is like a tiny bit like you can tell that it's kind of like going through some kind of filters. You know, it doesn't sound like perfect. You know, the fidelity of your voice, but is dropped a little bit to that sacrifice. I assume is necessary to like do all the filtering, but I don't hear anything. Just leave it unmuted for a while so we can listen.
There's a lot of very noisy buses right here, so I'm right next to
Very quiet.
I heard a tiny bit of squeal a little bit, but it wasn't even that bad.
It does muffle him out a bit, like.
And actually, there's jackhammers. I can hear jackhammers. I don't know where.
Jackhammer. I don't hear anything.
Nobody hears jackhammers.
That's fantastic.
I don't know where those jackhammers are, but yeah. Oh yeah, I'm passing a construction site. Okay, yeah. So there's jackhammers. Do you hear the? Wait, let me get a little closer. Yeah. Can you hear them now?
No.
No.
It's nothing.
Listen to the replay and then you'll see what we mean.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We need you to go and actually let the guy ask you if he'll let you use the jackhammer.
How is it now?
I hear nothing.
Right next to it.
We don't hear anything.
Like, I actually have to shout.
We don't hear
anything.
You're kidding me.
Can you reach over and give the guy a hug, Jack, just so we know how proportionate?
What?
Sit on the jackhammer.
Yeah. Like, I can barely hear you because of the jack.
That's fantastic.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't want that guy back on. That's, like, weird. And also, like, it could just be a scam, you know.
I've never seen a homeless person knocking about on Clubhouse before. That's a first.
Yeah.
He should. The scammer, though, he's a very convincing one.
Well, maybe it's not a scam, but I mean, he could also. He should ask his brethren. You know,
how many black
I think it's up to them.
Israelites you think there are? Where?
Oh, is he not in New York? I thought they were not in New York.
Sounded like he was. What did he say? North Carolina.
Yeah, just leave it unmuted for a while.
Okay.
That's great.
I don't hear it. You know what?
It's not that noisy right here, but
What's good, brother? How far me to USA, bro?
Because it's like when the traffic is slow, it's not as noisy.
Can you by any chance next time you get to a noisy area, can we like have a side by side, like you turn the headset off and then we hear what all is going on?
Oh well, I'd have to switch though because it's always through my my other headphones. Like I could try putting them on.
Well, just switch between like your native phone microphone and the headset you're wearing.
But I don't know that that's gonna really Seems like it'd be very misleading because I'm never
Right.
on like the speakerphone mic when I'm outside.
If you plug in your wired headset,
Yeah, I can try plugging in my wired headset and compare
and then you
it.
just turn it off. I think I'll switch right over.
Yeah, let me try doing that.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Is that your old one?
Okay, now I switched to the other one. Is it much noisier?
It's awful. It's horrible.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. Okay. Let me switch back.
Yeah, listen to the first 2 or 3 minutes of this
Yeah.
replay.
Your mic, you've got to read.
There was so much
How do you
ambient.
turn it on? Oh, now it's working. Okay.
Wow.
There used to be so much ambient noise that whenever you were unmuted, you would drown out anybody else that was talking. Now, even if you're unmuted, you can still hear.
Well, yeah, the funny thing is actually a hassle for me because it would be like, I couldn't like, if my like hands were full or something, I couldn't really have a conversation because if I left my mic unmuted, the other person would get drowned out.
Right.
So I'd have to keep muting. And so it was like impossible. At times it was impossible to talk if like my hands were full or something.
Yeah, like right now you're almost completely silent.
Yeah, that's funny because it's pretty loud right now on the streets.
What kind of headset did you get?
That was just a motorcycle. Say it again?
What kind of headset is that?
I forget what it's called.
It's called a Shocks OpenCom headset. OpenCom.
Okay, so now I'm about to walk into Barnes & Noble. So just wondering whether it's much quieter in here. Is it noticeable?
Infinitely so, yeah.
See, it sounds suddenly quieter.
Not really. There's not much.
Oh, it doesn't.
It's just your.
Okay. You're gonna walk through Barnes and Noble's talking? That's rude. Oh, it's not low reading.
That. No, people don't read in here because they don't have. They no longer really have. I guess they read in the cafeteria or cafe. I guess they don't. They used to have, like comfy chairs and stuff, but I guess there were like just too many people coming in and just sitting there all day. So they got rid of all that. In the cafe, you have to buy something to sit there.
The local coffee shop, a few of them started giving hour passwords to Wi-Fi so that they could get people in and out faster.
Yeah, at Panera, they don't want you to stay more than 45 minutes unless you buy something.
Well, there's so many Paneras around here that like people run full-on businesses out of them. I saw one where a guy would bring in a monitor with a Mac Mini attached to the back of it. Every morning, it just worked there all.
Are there a lot of girls in yoga pants?
There are several of them.
So those are the Paneras I've been trying to find for
Well, come
years.
out here. They're not called Panera out here, but yeah, there's a ton.
Yeah, you can definitely hear your heavy breathing as you're like excited about what he's describing.
Is that so? Wait, well, what happens if I talk in a soft? Let me just see if I talk in a soft voice. Like if somebody came up to me and said you're talking too loud. Okay, so now I'm talking in a soft voice. How easy is it to hear me?
It's like Sasha. It's not good.
It's not good. Okay, so I probably should use my headset. I probably should use my ordinary wired headset when it's not noisy. Are you good?
Soft.
It was quiet.
Soft but audible.
Wait, maybe my volume's... oops, my volume is turned down.
It's just that with the wired headset, when it's not noisy, if I can talk in a really quiet voice as long as I have the mic really close to my mouth. Yeah.
You said
it was fine. I just had my volume down.
Yeah.
Do it again. Talk in a soft...
Alright, so now I'm talking in a very quiet voice. Like
That's good, Jack. That's good.
You can still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Oh, that's amazing. Because I can't really hear myself.
Good, that's good.
New headset sounds powerful.
Congratulations, Jack.
Well, you probably should congratulate the people who bought it.
Oh, okay.
We expect 20% more dunking on Theist, Jack.
Yeah, this doesn't do shit for him, really. This is all for...
Can I ask? Yeah, that's true. That's true. It was. But what kind did you get? I'm just curious.
A Shox OpenCom.
A what?
Shox OpenCom.
Oh, okay.
25% more. Shut up while I'm talking to you.
He needs to put a link in his bio.
Jack's headphones. Yeah.
Now with
Jack's
less
headphones.
ambient sound.
Yeah, Jack's headphones are just an instrumental good. They are not good in themselves.
Yeah, so let's see, I wrote this down. It was Dr. Jeff, Daz, Moto, Adam, John Lee, Brandon, Haiti, Snooks, AJ, and Delano.
The only reason I donated was ODD.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Well, I should thank John because I really wouldn't have expected him to contribute. Well, I thank everybody, but especially John because it's so surprising.
Well, look, he likes
would
to
contribute money
I
to
wouldn't
me.
be too flattered, Jack. It was complete ODD.
He likes to cut Christianity, and what better way to do it?
Oh yeah,
than
Tom
enable you-
missed a lot today because John Lee was going after James. James is tired.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a couple of statements kind of triggered me where he says Jesus didn't have to come, and then he also said God changes his mind. It kind of triggered me a little bit.
Yeah, Tom would like that.
But I think through clarification, I think we worked it out. So I'm all right with it.
I don't think you worked it out at all. What do you mean? Did you work it out?
Well, as far as changing his mind, God changing his mind, it seemed like he said God doesn't change his mind, as I thought he was implying. And then as far as Jesus having to come, he did agree that the decision was made prior to the creation, and once having created, that he was going to come, no matter what.
The only thing I think maybe me and John might disagree on is I don't believe that God was caused to send Jesus. I believe that God chose to send Jesus. That might be the distinction.
Well, sure. I mean, I would say that, of course. I guess the difference is that God chose to send Jesus, but once having created, he had no choice but to follow through on his plan to send Jesus. That's what I mean. It's kind of like once God makes a promise, covenant, whatever you want to call it, he has no choice but to honor it.
Does that, when you say John that God is contingent at that point, or how would, because some people say would make God contingent, or would you?
No, I wouldn't say that represents contingent at all. And in the sense that God having to keep his word wouldn't make him contingent.
Who would say that God would be contingent at that point?
Well, I've heard people say that if God had to, if he created and then he had to save, then it meant he had no other choice. But so he was kind of determined because of man's sin to save him at that point.
Well, determined and
I don't really
contingent
know.
on the same thing.
I've heard that criticism before. I don't really know if it works, but I've heard it. But I kind of agree with John in the sense that God's nature is such that when he chooses to create, then because he's love, he'll provide a way if people do fall because of his nature. So it almost seems like he is bound by his own nature in that case. But
yeah. I noticed you said when God creates. I would say before God creates, Matt. That's the difference.
See, I think there is a philosophical issue here, because John Lee likes to say that God has no obligations. So that would seem to indicate that he doesn't have an obligation to keep his promises, right?
Actually, Jack, I did say God has we were talking about moral obligations, and God is a lawgiver. He's obligated to give us moral laws. I think I was saying that he does have, in that sense, obligation.
But when so he ought to, you do think God ought to keep his promises?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think he has a choice.
No, but see, the thing about obligations is you do have a choice, right? That's what distinguishes obligation, right, from some kind of like compulsion or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I would accept that word as well. God is compelled to.
No, but what I mean is that like an obligation in the ordinary sense is something that you're morally bound to do, right? And so if you don't do it, you're, I don't know, not living up to a commitment, or are guilty, or something like that, culpable, right? So the point is, it's possible to not live up to it. That an obligation has built into it the idea that it's possible to not live up to it, right? You do it because you think you ought to, right? You conform to an obligation because you think you ought to, right? So if there's sort of like no way of not being in accord with it, then I don't think we would understand it to be an obligation. We'd understand it to be some kind of like causal necessity or something like that.
Well, I don't have a problem with that kind of language either. It is necessary that God abides by his promises or something like that?
Yeah, necessarily abides by his promises, but then it doesn't really seem like it makes sense to say that he ought to be in accord with them, if you see what I mean.
No, I do see what you mean, but to me, I think the word obligation, you're saying it implies the ability not to. I don't see that necessity in that word. I think that's the difference.
Well, but I'm understanding obligation here to be a kind of ought. Because I mean, the word obligation might be used in different senses, right?